What did fuel your campaign? Almost nothing, because you got totally blown out. But I got to give Kamala Harris finally the credit, and she had a right to take a shot at President Trump. Trump did not concede the last election, did not stay around for the inauguration. I don't know if she will and Joe Biden will, but my sense is they're going to try to show him up and do that, and it is the right thing to do. But the rest of the speech seemed like a campaign speech. And why did she wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon to do it? Probably 4:30. Now Joe Biden made a call, congratulated President Trump. That's a good sign. He said, come to the White House. That's another good sign. They should do all those things. It makes the American people and the rest of the world a little less anxiety-filled. But I think this is the first time in a mandate since really 2008 when Barack Obama got it. I think that and this is the biggest one for a Republican maybe in my lifetime, maybe Reagan. With me right now is Douglas Murray, from the National Review Institute fellow, best-selling author. You got a new book coming out, don't you? Didn't you tell me you had a book coming out?
I do. It's not been announced yet, Brian. We can't announce it on.
So did I just give up top secret information?
You gave up wildly top secret information. I can never trust you again.
But just know that I will fully back it.
That's
when it's ready.
The secret book comes out in the spring. Yeah.
So tell me about this concession. Tell me your view of our election.
Well, I was down in Mar-a-Lago for the night, and
Tuesday.
Yes. And it was obviously historic, extraordinary evening. When did you go, by the way? Were you there before it was decided? Did you see the anxiety level dip? Yes, very much so. I thought that the moment when things started to really become clear was actually when Republicans managed to flip those Senate seats, because that suggested that this was the wave that
Bernie Moreno.
That was the wave the Trump team had been hoping for. At Madison Square Gardens, I was there a couple of weeks earlier, and some of the Trump team then said, what we're focusing on is we also need to get the popular vote. And I thought at the time, maybe that's a bit of a reach, and so it turns out not to be. So I thought that on the night itself, there were a couple of moments when it became clear. I spoke to the president just after the Senate seats flipped, and that was really a very clear indicator that maybe the whole thing was gonna come the Republicans' way. And I was like a lot of us, I was unsure whether we were going to get a result on the night. And then it became clear we would, and everyone headed to the convention center. And the cleanness of the win is something, as you know and your listeners know, is absolutely crucial. And I think some of the relatively diminished howling on the other side is simply because of their just inability to deny that they lost everything. They lost everything. And if it had been remotely closer, or if they could have done their whining about the Electoral College again, they would have done, but they can't. So it was a historic night, and I thought that the president-elect's speech was very, very important to a highly energized room.
Did he write it? Did he have it written down, or he had lived that?
He seemed to have it. He seemed to have.
Was there prompters out there?
He seemed to have the skeleton of it written down. The folder he carried on stage, and I thought it was a very, very good speech. I thought that what was then on everyone's minds was, why has there been no word from the Harris campaign other than sending her supporters home? And I did think that by the next morning, and I had contact with some of the Democrats. I was saying, why is your candidate not saying anything? This really looks very bitter and unpleasant. My guess is that she was drinking a bottle of wine. Did you hear anything? Did
you hear anybody say that, or is that your?
No, it was my guess. But the fact she didn't come out till gone 4 the day after. I do think, as you say, Trump's had his own issues.
First, it was supposed to be the morning at 10 o'clock. You know that, and then they pushed it to.
That's why I say maybe there was some. But anyway, I think that it showed that she was unable. She does not have it in her, and this is one of the things that made her fundamentally unfit for office. Anyway, she does not have it in her to have any self-examination. She could have on the night said what. One of my favorite examples is Nixon in 1960. He had a lot of pressure to concede. And he ended up going in front of the press and a room full of his supporters at the hotel in Los Angeles and said at 2:30 in the morning, I know you don't want to hear this, but we've lost this. And conceded and congratulated his opponent, JFK. She didn't have that in her. And I think it's the final final demonstration to the American public. This was somebody who was fundamentally unfit for office, that she couldn't, and she didn't even in her speech late yesterday afternoon, she didn't even have it in her there to have any self-examination of why her campaign was so hideously rejected by the American
$1 billion, 107 days, $1 billion. And she wouldn't do an interview, wouldn't give a position. You know what did it for me? When that crime bill, that crime reform in California, Prop 34, was out there, she had an opportunity to say, yeah, you know what? We got to crack down on crime. It's time for the criminals to stay behind bars. Smash and grab was something I didn't anticipate. And contrast it to 2014 when she basically wrote it. But she says, I will not endorse. Yeah. Instinctively, Douglas Murray, I mean, what are you kidding me? This is an opportunity.
It would have been too little too late anyway. It's extremely hard for people to concede the problem when the problem is them. But, at some point, the Democrats should recognize that they put up a fantastically awful candidate.
And why did they pick her even as the running mate?
Well, we all know
because he said
why.
a woman of color, it would knocked it down to 3 people.
I mean, you would hope that after this, the Democrats would do some of the self-examination they did not do after 2016. I always say that the importance of clear results in elections is not just that the winner knows that they've won, but that the loser knows they've lost. If they don't recognize they lost, this was Hillary Clinton's problem, and the Democrats' problem for the last 8 years. It was this. We had Russia, we had the impeachment attempts, we had all the false claims about the win in 2016. The Democrats had a chance to actually pivot on the issues. Why were they losing the working class? Why were they losing the ability to even speak to American workers? And they didn't do that switch. They couldn't do it. Can they do it now? We'll see. But of course, it's not the problems of the Democrats are a secondary issue at the moment.
So they say sexist, racist, and I could play a whole bunch of clips, but I'd rather listen to you. Well, sexist, racist. Are you kidding me?
They maybe they can grow up after this and realize that one of the problems was that doesn't work anymore. They've tried to insult the American public for long enough. And the American public turns out not to like being insulted all the time. What were you meant to think if you were a white working class guy in America looking at the candidates in this election? On the one hand was Donald Trump and the Republicans saying, they're not just speaking for you, but they're going to do things to improve your lot in life. On the other hand, there's the Democrats simply saying, well, white working class guys, you better prove you're not a racist misogynist and vote for us. That's not a very appealing brand. But they've tried this. There've been some of the usual asylum lunatics of the left who spent the last 24 hours trying to do this again. My suspicion is on the left-wing networks and even in the party, the wiser voices will realize this is not how you speak to the public.
Aren't we watching? And Doug, isn't this good? We're a self-correcting country, I think, more than anyone I know.
So. Very much so.
And so all of a sudden, businesses are going, yeah, we're not doing the DEI thing. We're not getting good people. We can't live under this criteria. We don't really think we're sexist and racist. People pushing back, fundamental feel for patriotism. I'm relieved. We're coming up on our 250th birthday. It's a big deal. So President Trump will be there. Say what you want about him. Does anyone think he's not patriotic? Does anyone think he doesn't want to celebrate 250 years? I was worried that we're going to do the 1619 Project and have someone say we're built on the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that's what we were getting. We're not comfortable with that.
No, Americans don't want that. Of course not. But this is what the left has been trying to push on all of us for years now. I'd hope that the result this week is in part a rejection of that anti-American narrative, anti-Western narrative. But look, what Kamala Harris said in her speech yesterday afternoon struck me that there was one thing in particular in it that was worth noting, which was she was still trying to warm up this completely hollow narrative. What we just heard in that excerpt where she said, I will concede the election, but will not concede the fight that is behind our campaign. There was no real fight. This was all empty, hollow rhetoric. And she tried it for months and it didn't work and it was soundly rejected. And it's because the American public could tell that she was a hollow person. She said all these things like, we need to go forward into the future, not back into the past. Sorry? What are you going to do about grocery bills? We need to be the change of the people who are the people we're waiting for after we've come back from the past. None of this meant anything.
I know. What about the work? We're not afraid of work. Hard work is good work. What are you talking about? You don't have to tell us about a work ethic.
Who's the campaigner who'd say, I like drifting around, kinda, and prefer the public to kind of drift and meander. Let's meander into the future. No, I mean this was she was such a hideous candidate because it was like watching in the old days a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox until you can't really see what's on the page anymore. She was a copy of a copy of a copy, and by the time it got to her, none of it really meant anything.
Do you realize how much healthier it would be for the country to have like a Harold Ford run for president, center-left?
Yeah.
All right, I understand there's certain positions you want to do more social spending. Other positions you want to spend on defense. Those are healthy debates. But when you say we have to get rid of oil and gas cars by 2040, and then you make dealerships fill up their cars with electric cars they can't sell, and everyone keep your mouth shut, you're a racist, or you don't like the environment, the militants who gave you this environmental movement, I want you to hear what Joe Manchin said. Somebody's now out of Congress. Cut 6.
Donald Trump didn't win just with the MAGA. He won with the centrist, the common sense, the independents in the middle. He was able to have a program that basically more people bought in than what Kamala did. That's the middle. The power of the middle is unbelievable. I just hope when they get to Washington, they remember how they got there. They got there by appealing to reasonable, responsible, sensible people that are in the middle. I'm in the middle. A lot of people, Democrats have become homeless, and a lot of Republicans became homeless. And we weren't Washington Democrats. We weren't Republican Democrats, but we wanted to get things done. You get things done from the middle.
He said he didn't vote for her, but people have told me too, conservatives like you, Roger Ailes famously said, you're in the middle of the road, you're roadkill. So how do you feel about that? What he said, knowing you're conservative, right? So how do you feel about that, Josh? Is he naive?
Well, I think Manchin is a fine man, and it's sad he's out. But he's going
to be on my show on Saturday. So
good. Yeah. So he's not out at all.
Yeah,
he's right at the center of things. He's one of the old school Democrats that you could recognize, and that the Republicans could do business with in any normal season. He's a fine man. He's a patriot, and he really knows his issues. He would never, if he'd have been the candidate of the Democrats, he would not have waffled on about issue after issue, and he knows his brief. Kamala Harris never knew her brief.
Oh, yeah.
One time she was being asked about inflation. I came away with a very strong view that she does not know what inflation is. I'm pretty confident she doesn't know.
Douglas Murray, I know you do. And in a moment, we're going to take a short time out and come back. Don't move.
Obviously, there is going to be a lot of soul searching and asking a lot of questions in the coming hours and days about what, if anything, could Democrats and the Harris campaign have done differently. One thing that we are clearly already starting to see take place is finger pointing and the blame game. And a lot of that is going to be directed at President Biden. And this is even coming from some folks inside of the Harris campaign. One senior official I just talked to said Biden will hold a lot of blame for it. And frankly, they said he should.
Yeah. So no doubt about it. He wants $300 million for his library. This is going to hurt him. Douglas Murray.
I'm deeply sorry for him for that, obviously. He was looking forward to having a nap in that library.
And I was looking forward for a field trip. I'd love to go to the library, because normally I have to go to his garage to get top secret documents. So I think it'll be good to go to one central location. I got to ask you about Iran. How does Iran feel today? You spend so much time in the Middle East and Israel. What do you think the reality is? They blew up their missile defense already. They took out the radar, we know, in Syria and Iraq to help them guide their missiles. What do you think they're thinking with Trump?
I think that if there was any country in which there could have been a landslide for Trump equivalent to or superior to the one that was given by the American public this week, anywhere in the world, it would have been the Israeli public. They are so pro-Trump. because they know that the region they're in is the most dangerous region in the world. They don't have the benefit, the Israelis, of having Canadians to their north. And it's a rough neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood in which only strength is respected. And the Harris-Biden administration was a very wobbly ally, actually, to Israel. It was a very wobbly ally.
More wobbly than we know.
More wobbly than
the
people
public
realize.
does.
I mean, there was just one thing that was made public the other week, of course, was the intelligence leak from the administration. A minor figure in the administration, but leaked the sites that the Israelis were hoping to strike inside Iran. An ally does not do that. An ally cannot be a leaky ship. And that was all deliberate. I've said many times, but if the Democrats had spent as much time trying to get regime change in Iran as they tried doing regime change in Israel, the mullahs would have fallen by now. The aim of the Biden-Harris administration for the last year has been to get Benjamin Netanyahu out of power in Jerusalem because they see him as being the principal obstacle to peace.
Which is nuts, by the way.
It's nuts. They say that he's intransigent. No, it's Hamas that's intransigent.
And Hezbollah and fundamentally
and
Iran.
Hezbollah and their backer, Iran. It is. I mean, everything about that conflict has been from the United Nations and others. They are weak. They have allowed Hezbollah and Hamas to do what they do, and only President Trump back in the White House can reassert the proper balance of power, which is not Hezbollah peacefully being allowed to continue firing missiles at Israel, but making sure, among other things, that the hostages are got back home and Iran is on the line.
Right away, before he takes office, he wants those hostages home. Douglas Murray, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.